Okay. So now we have that at least if we miss anything. I also can't have the agenda in front of me because it's not. Ask someone else to pull up the agenda. Actually, I can pull it up on here. Here's the agenda. This isn't mirroring my screen. All right, you guys get to look at me. I'm very sorry because I have to look at the agenda. So we did welcomes. The points that we wanted to make in this meeting are about the NOAA grant, if we have any feedback from that yet. We didn't get that NOAA grant, which I know we sent an email about, and DEM is going to be meeting with them in July to get some feedback on why. We want to talk about some funding opportunities coming up, hear how the meeting went with the Pawtucket Redevelopment Agency, talk about the Fish Passage 101 one-pager, and actively, hopefully, if we have time within this meeting to get that feedback, and talk about some other opportunities, outreach opportunities coming up. And also John Marsland asked if we can also talk about the Valley Falls Marsh project. So we'll share what the drawings look like that for now. Great, thank you so much.
You want to just mute and turn your camera on for a second? Tell us if you can hear us. Can you guys hear us now?
I can hear Caitlin, but not Stephanie.
Okay. So I think if we speak a little louder, this will pick up. It's just, we're a little far from the, so yeah, sorry, Steph. That's okay. All right, so we're just gonna talk loudly.
Sounds fine to me.
Yeah, sounds good.
Maybe sounds good. Turn them up too a little. Yep. Thanks. If we can. So Caitlin, I'll immediately hand it to you and say, do you have any updates on, or do you want to provide that kind of overview? We didn't get the NOAA grant. We're waiting to hear back from feedback. Is there anything else to add on that?
Yeah, we will have, I think, a meeting, follow-up meeting with NOAA. Just they'll provide us with a reviewer comments so we can see, you know, what we lost points on. And we'll share that feedback with the group, but certainly we'll incorporate that into the next grant proposal. So.
Does anyone have questions on that?
I have concerns. How's that? All due respect, we couldn't get it this time. It seems like the window is closed, quite frankly, unless the election turns out that the current administration stays. But you had a Rhode Islander as the Department of Commerce director. You had someone else who used to run this agency in place, and we still couldn't get the grant. That doesn't bode well. I'm just being honest. And this is some of our internal discussions here in the Park Service, not necessarily my idea, but I conceded that this was pretty bad. And so if it was a failure of politics, I'd also like to know what went on, because phone calls were being made from the very highest positions in DC on this. That's a huge problem. And if that can't be fixed, and we're not competitive enough as it is, should we bump?
Yeah, I mean, if that's to me, I'm not sure what to say other than we're trying to glean any information we can from, you know, like the reviewer comments are not going to give you that information. Like that's not going to tell you anything about the political situation. And so we do know that there were phone calls made from the congressional delegation. We had a lot of back and forth with them. Jason had pretty regular contact with Janet Coit but never assurances that this was a sure thing, you know, so we were kind of expecting this outcome. So I think we want to make sure that there's nothing on the proposal end that we're missing, that there isn't anything that's kicking us out of consideration. I do think the price tag is probably a large part of why we got denied and where it's situated, and that it's fish passage, not a dam removal. So I feel if we can't do anything to get the construction costs down, then yeah, we do not have a good chance of finding $20 million for this project. But I don't, that's a conversation for another meeting. I'm not saying we should discuss that right now, but I think the price tag is just astronomical and not likely to be approved for federal funding as one, you know, request. But the rest of it is above my pay grade. Like I can't really speak to the politics other than we provided all the information that was asked for. And I think you're absolutely right. It's like, this seemed like the moment in time. We were being encouraged to apply. So it seems odd that we would get denied. But, you know, there were some things that were missing from the application. You know, when we came onto the project, it was obvious, like, there were a lot of questions about City of Pawtucket support, and those were not addressed because those conversations had not been had. And so I'm not trying to speak out of line here, but I think that that part of the proposal could have been a lot stronger. I don't know that that's the thing that sunk the proposal. But again, all we can do from our positions is lean is up. You know, we want to go after every bit of information that we can to find out, are there things we should be saying differently or focusing on or including. Certainly, I think there's been some progress in building the community relationships that need to be built since then, but you know, that doesn't really help us at this point. So we just need to be, you know, it's going to be like preparation meets opportunity. So like, we need to be ready for the next grant round, whether we can ask for the whole amount or part of it. We need to just keep trying. If that's the goal of this group, is to get it done. Like, we will cobble together multiple sources if we have to. You know, that was like, I agree, like that was our chance to maybe get the whole enchilada, but oftentimes that's not the case. So I appreciate your perspective. Like I think those are legitimate concerns.
I agree. I think every effort was made to get the congressional delegation and all the past governor and Quake involved, and they were behind it. They encouraged us. They didn't score proposal. Proposal was scored by NOAA underwriters that may have been on the West Coast, the Great Lakes, down in the Gulf. We have no idea. And they're bean counters. Now, there was 6 times the request for money that went in. Only a 6th available. So it was very competitive. I'd like to know what the theme was. What did they have in mind? What were they looking for? They won't tell you that. You know, when Jason goes and talks to them, they're going to say what I just said. Well, it was a great proposal. It was really good. But you know, there was 6 times the request, the funding that we had. It's like, well, you know, is it a problem that we're not focusing on dam removal? Are you dam removal centric? We want to build technical fish ladders where dam removal isn't an option. Is the FERC issue there? Is it a problem that West Coast talks about opening up 100 miles of river on the Columbia River Basin? We're talking about 6 river miles. Those 6 river miles are very important to us in Rhode Island and to the watershed. People who are paying federal taxes. It'd be nice to get some of that money back. So these are the kinds of things that I think that we can do to go forward, but we're not giving up. I mean, we're not stopping.
Yeah, we are committed. I will say, just having been involved with both NOAA fisheries grants and other NOAA grants, they are concerned with metrics, and it's like things like stream miles and acreage, you know, boost scores. And so that is, again, this was a grant opportunity that was very much focused on dam removal. So we do want to like glean that information of like, and maybe make NOAA aware. Sometimes it's, you know, it's important to raise these issues. Like, this is an urban watershed. You know, if you want funding to be spent in urban areas, you're gonna have to make scoring considerations for areas where you may not be getting undeveloped acres of watershed. You may be talking about a fishway in a very highly urbanized area, but that still has value. So we're trying to definitely make that known to NOAA. And we've had conversations about other grant opportunities that are very, like, don't kind of make those kinds of considerations. I feel like the community outreach and engagement piece of our proposal was really great. And we thought, you know, that might be what makes us stand out. And we'll certainly try to emphasize that going forward. But yeah, sorry.
You mentioned that they may not have thought that the city of Pawtucket was behind it enough, or that may not have shown through. Do you think that they noticed that? Do you think they noticed that, or would it have been part of the proposal that you didn't have control over the parcels of land, all of the parcels of land involved in it? Or was that not part of the scoring?
That could have, yes. I mean, it was stated that the land was under ownership by the city. And at the time it was Old Slater Mill Association.
Yeah,
So,
private entity.
right. So that may have, you know, if you don't thoroughly explain something, that could lead somebody to make assumptions. And yes, I think we could have had stronger letters of support from the city. You know, we felt like that was something that was missing. And so going forward, that's something we're gonna have to address. Like, we know, we're in that relationship, but.
The other thing is, you don't know how these people were thinking.
Yeah.
I mean, they were, they wanted to be held accountable for doing the right thing. So they, by their guidelines, and the guidelines may have been very restricted. But the state of Rhode Island received a big grant under this program for the Pawcatuck, multi-million, $12 million to go ahead with Pawcatuck. So people saying, well, they already got that, you know.
That's absolutely possible. They do, you know, many of the NOAA programs, they're trying to get geographic distribution. And so I think it's safe to say those proposals were in some sense competing against each other. So, you know, it's possible.
This year, this round?
Yes.
The last round, that would be,
Oh.
yeah, that would be,
Yeah.
that would be fun too, yeah.
Oh, so they were
12
competing
million,
against one
yeah.
another? Oh,
Well, they were in the pool.
Yeah.
Competing, yes,
Yes.
both of them. And that one featured dam removal, which may or may
Yeah,
not take place.
And so if you know, as John said, the demand was astronomical. So if they're trying to get distribution of projects to fund two in Rhode Island, you know, they may have said, no, we're gonna go Maine or, you know, spread out along the New England states, so.
And we had over double the budget ask.
Yeah, the price tag was definitely part of it. I mean, you know, it was a big ask for a structure, you know, fishway structure, not dam removal. And so the project itself didn't have a lot of additional habitat benefit beyond the fish passage and river connectivity component. Whereas, you know, some of these other projects, you're talking about stream restoration and, you know, floodplain restoration. But again, like, that's why we're gonna bother to talk to, you know, the review committee or the person representing the reviewer comments to try to glean into that. The project is what it is. I think we all feel strongly that we still value it as it is. You know, we still think this is a worthwhile pursuit. We just, maybe it's a different source of funding and a different angle that we have to think about. Maybe we need to look at, you know, because there is still, you know, there's a Justice 40 initiative. You know, this administration at least still wants to spend money in these types of communities. So, yeah.
I got a comment. So this river was used to build America. The dams have come and started. So this river is over. Payback, how we destroyed it. So can't they look at that? I mean,
I mean, we did try to tell that story in the proposal. You know, we very much tried to frame this as, this is extremely historically significant. The river has been used and abused for centuries, you know. This is an attempt to bring it somewhat, you know, by some degree back to what it was. And while explaining why we can't take these dams out because of the whole historical significance, you know. So yes, I mean, like, we thought we did a pretty good job of painting that picture. But yeah, again, it's like, we're just not sure. It was a really big ask in a state that got another award. It wasn't dam removal. I think it's probably just didn't clear the bar, you know. But again, we'll get whatever information we can. Try again.
So the next thing on the agenda is other funding opportunities. They're all gonna be smaller, more piecemeal, and not probably, I think, any of them towards the technical, which is hard. It's not towards the implementation. But the other ones that we wanted to mention are NIFWIP, Northeast Rivers and Forest Fund. And I don't know if you want to speak to that one at all. And then the America the Beautiful Challenge that DEM with the collaborative are going for, but again, it's public outreach and some modeling, but not focused on fish passage specifically. And then the last is the Narragansett Bay Estuary Program's investment into the program.
Yeah, and I haven't been working as closely on the NIFWIP funding. NIFWIP is a nonprofit organization that handles federal grant programs. So they're their own entity, but they're usually funneling federal restoration funding. So, and I think that was the funding source connected to their kind of business plan.
It was, yeah, the Northeast Watershed Business Plan. That's what that was spelled out.
So
you saw the limitations.
Yes, so they, you know, NIFWIP also does kind of regional planning efforts. They fund things like the National Coastal Resilience Fund, America the Beautiful, which is about like land conservation, and they do alongside these grant programs, which get federal funding, they get private funding, and NIFWIP administers all of that. They do kind of regional planning. So they will, you know, do these regional efforts where they'll go into a region and they'll identify priorities around a certain topic, like habitat restoration or resiliency. They've established resilience hubs throughout the Northeast. For this particular fund, there's a map that talks about priority areas. And as John has brought up, like Rhode Island is like not on the map. And so that's an issue, you know, and again, it's like, we need to be giving them the feedback that like, how come we're not included, you know, why are these urban rivers getting kind of the short end of the stick? Think about like what the opportunities are under these programs. We've definitely been successful in applying to NIFWIP programs. The state has a great track record. So it's something we want to explore. And, you know, again, it's like, we have to be strategic, like think about the amount that's available, how much time we're going to put into writing these proposals. But because we put so much time into that NOAA proposal, like we'll be able to like reconfigure that for whatever funding comes down the line. I'll just say, like, having been involved in other massive fish passage grant proposals and projects, you know, it's almost always comes down to cobbling together various sources of funding. You know, for a lot of the Pawcatuck work we initially used, it was ARA funds, if you remember, the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act after the financial crash of 2008, like there was all this public funding, a lot of that went into restoration programs. We got a piece of that for fish passage. You know, Hurricane Sandy like made available all of these funds for habitat restoration. So it's unpredictable. Like and that's why I say like it's preparation meets opportunity. So we just kind of have to be ready. I think we're situated well now. We can do things to improve our readiness between now and whatever comes along. But you know, and again, I think another thing is like just looking at project costs. If there's any opportunity to bring that number down, I really do think we need to think about that. So that's just my 2 cents. And sorry, that didn't really provide a lot of detail about that program, but we will look at that. And the estuary program funding is more about kind of planning, and that's great because we don't have to compete as much for that funding because that's a priority for that program.
So the NIFWIP, Northeast Rivers and Forest funding is due July 11th. So by our next meeting, we'll know if it was worth it to go after that or
Yeah.
not and follow up. NBP is committing
So
as included within their work plan.
yes, John presented to the steering committee, and John, if you want to talk about that.
Well, there are two different ones there.
Yes,
So, yeah, so one is.
One was a direct award that we had with them now, a direct award for Elizabeth Webbing to take engineering and design to a certain level, 30% with fish passage alternative assessment. They are willing to amend that award, increase the cost and time period to bring Elizabeth Webbing up to 60% design and permit ready documents, which is the same level as which we are bringing Main Street and Slater Mills. All three dams will be at the same stage. That's a good stage to be when you're looking for funding, when you can turn around and say, okay, we know what the preferred design is, we know what you want to do, we have the permits to do it. We need to go out to bid, get some costs, and start construction. So that's the value, or that's the contribution from the direct award. It's really an amendment to the existing direct award. And Stephanie, there's the other competitive.
Yeah, so I don't know the best way to say this, but they've included in their work plan as a priority, so it's not necessarily guaranteed the $75,000 to supplement a DEM position.
oh, no, that is something that went before the steering committee and I think has been approved.
Okay, as part of.
Yeah, and that is coming out of their operations funds, which are available in October. So, do you want me to explain what that is? So the estuary program has also committed $75,000 towards a project coordinator, a river connectivity project coordinator position. That will be a contract position for at least 1 year that will sit at DEM. DEM will provide the remainder of the match needed for that position. And the idea is that person will help to manage this Blackstone effort, but also be available to work on other river connectivity projects. So I think it's kind of that project management piece that we've really needed to have somebody who's very much focused on keeping us on track and on timeline and coordinating all the different moving parts. And so we anticipate that would be advertised this fall.
Just to finish up with funding, we have in place the administrative structure to continue forward in an organized fashion, not going in different directions. It's all coming in under one group with an advisory committee and DEM stepping up and taking the lead role, having the ability to reach out to various entities. So, I mean, this is the structure you need. This is the structure that will be recognized to bring in various sources of funding. It's not going to different places. It's going into one body. And it's organized and maintained, through. So I mean, I'm optimistic that this has potential. If we really need $20 million for 2 dams, I don't know. Can we get by with less? I think so. And I think that's probably one of the things that has to be looked at closely.
So I, on the one hand, don't want to rush us through the agenda. On the other hand, we're extraordinarily behind. So just throwing
I'm
that
so
out there.
sorry. I really
No, it's not
apologize.
your fault.
Remember to check the plug.
It's okay. Well, you did it in the end, so that's good. So meeting with the Pawtucket Redevelopment Agency.
You want me to
Yeah,
start that, John?
you
So,
can- You're a lot more eloquent.
oh, please, come on now. well, John and I were both attended a meeting with the redevelopment agency, which is like situated within the planning department in Pawtucket, and it's Bianca Policastro is the director of both, and we kind of sat down as like a informational meeting after the site visit to talk about, you know, their RFP and the Blackstone project and how the two interact. Overall, extremely positive. It was great sitting down with Bianca. I think one person from her staff was there. She kind of started by saying, we are in support of your project and we will give you the easements you need. So that was reassuring. But it is clear that there's gonna have to be a lot of coordination because there is a lot going on in that part of Pawtucket. So there's the bikeway relocation project, there's the redevelopment project, there's the Stillwater development project, and so they have a Safe Streets initiative that's been funded. So it was clear to us that there's just gonna have to be really close coordination with both of our teams. I think not getting the funding takes a little bit of the pressure off, and you know, the sequence might not be that big of a deal. Because some of the things they're talking about are gonna happen relatively soon. Fuss and O'Neill was there. They are already working with the city very closely on the Stillwater development, and are very well versed in how that office works. And so that connection was made. I think they were gonna sit in on a meeting shortly after that about the redevelopment RFP. But I think the message was kind of communicated that like, any redevelopment entity that comes in is gonna have to be aware of what we wanna do on the Blackstone and what our staging needs are gonna be. And so I think at the very least, lines of communication were established, and we're gonna have to just make sure that we're all, you know, communicating on the details going forward. But again, Fuss and O'Neill was great, and I think is gonna be plugged into that process. So all in all, it was reassuring, and hopefully we've got a connection now that means we'll all be on the same page. So I don't know, John, feel free to.
No, I think it was. I think that, you know, a little leery going in there because we had heard from, particularly when we had that site visit with Mr. Cassidy, but it was completely different. It was very positive.
Thank you for doing that. Other quick updates. I think we had a successful fish parade event. In the interest of time, we won't share pictures with you, but we have great photos. So thank you, especially actually Kate, for taking some of those great photos, and for everyone who could attend. We had mentioned before that the collaborative has within another grant, we were going to host a public forum around Elizabeth Webbing Dam and the opportunities for Pawtucket and the state to both create public parks there. And because of the timeline, we don't want to rush it and make it everyone kind of uncomfortable with that process, since we don't have as much information to share. So we're going to step back a little bit. We're still going to have an event, but we are going to have it just sort of lower Blackstone. And so it's much more general, like how do you use the river in this area? What would you like to see? So we're not going to talk about specific parcels. We're not going to talk about boundaries. We're not going to have it focused on fish passage. It's just more generally interacting with the lower Blackstone, recreation, you know, mentioning fish passage being an important part of that, et cetera.
Can I just
Yep.
step in? And so appreciate your flexibility on that. Like, appreciate you guys kind of taking a step back a little. And sorry that we're not like
It's okay.
farther along. I just wanted to ask if you were gonna like engage the city at all on that, and just, I mean, it would be nice if they were aware that that's happening. I don't know if they would send a representative, but.
So we're waiting to hear back from the YMCA. We're hoping to host it at the YMCA in Pawtucket, and we've just been playing phone tag and an email. So we're waiting to hear back, and if we can confirm the date, so we're looking at I think it's a Thursday, July 25th. If that works, then we'll make sure that everyone is a part of that, and it'll be in the evening, so it's more of like a public community process.
That's great.
But we would definitely like Pawtucket to attend.
Yeah.
So we'll share more about that very soon. The other update that John mentioned of Valley Falls Marsh. Oh,
It's Valley Falls Heritage Park.
right, sorry. I wrote in my, yep, there we go. Let me see if I can share my screen. Yes, it will. So. John, do you want to talk about what's going on there?
I think that's the existing condition of Valley Falls Heritage Park. And they have new designs. Have quite a bit of water in the canals there. Is the canals being considered for fish passage?
Not that I'm aware of.
So I know like Blackstone Hydro is considering limiting 3 CFS into the park. That doesn't look like 3 CFS is on board of the park.
I don't know. I've walked through there a number of times and it's beautiful stone. Any of you haven't seen, you gotta go and see those beautiful stone arches there. It's great. The obligation for fish passage is on part of the owner. Hydro. At such time that we get fish passed, so whether be in the recent relicensing that they will need to provide fish passes. It's my understanding that, you know, they've worked with both the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Fish Passage Engineering Group, as well as park reviewers, was a grader, and to some degree DEM on, you know, the future, what they would do. They've had, I think, Alden Labs go in and take a look at this. I don't think this was ever talked about, discussed, or it may have been, but dismissed. I'm not sure. Now, if you want, I can, you know, check in and see just where this fits in, if it was considered at all. It'd be worth it. I can talk to Liz about it and see if that was all considered.
But this is a public project on the publicly owned portion of the site. Yeah.
And so Cumberland commissioned this engineer or this design firm, this landscape architect to do these visioning sessions with the public. So if you have already happened and they've gathered some information about what people want to see, whether they want to see gardens or boardwalks, or they really want to be able to bring in what the mill was and have sort of, you can see, like if you can see my mouse, the rain gardens here, for instance, they're very square and chunky because that's where the foundation was for some of the mill. They want to like echo where that was. So yeah, it's kind of a hard site because there are a lot of different elevations. So they're trying to put in all these different elevations and be able to make sure that the entire site is accessible. Getting to piece because there are all these little islands. Kate, I see your hand.
Thanks. Yeah, it was a little hard to hear John O'Brien, but I wanted to say thanks John Marsland for sending this in advance of the meeting. I did see like a very general, like here's where a fish ladder is going to go. I'm not sure if any engineers have taken a look, but at least somebody has raised like a fish ladder as part of the design in this. So it was like the second to the last slide.
Yeah, that was just right here, fish ladder gathering. So it was discussed at the outreach meeting of, hey, what about fish passage? And what the landscape architect basically said was, what we understand is in the relicensing process, this owner of the dam is required to provide fish passage at the time that, right, fish get to this point. So
Okay.
it's within their scope that they know this has to happen, but it's not within the landscape architect's scope to really design it or understand it. So they're sort of throwing it in there that somewhere there'll be fish passage and we want to be able to have people see it. So there's this gathering area, but I don't know if it's actually feasible in that location.
Okay.
Hey, this is Sean. I'm with Blackstone Hydro. So I'll give a quick little rundown here. We do have that requirement in the future when fish are present. We also have a more recent or current requirement to fix the gate. You can see a gate on the lower left of your screen. So in that process, we've discussed just the park itself with Cumberland. And both of us are interested in upstream fish passage through the canals. Some of the existing conditions actually work decently for that. I'm not a biologist, so but I've heard it through other engineers we work with. So I think that's where they took this. We had that discussion with Cumberland sort of in context of our gate repair and the opportunity there, because we do think there's an opportunity, and Blackstone Hydro shares an interest in that. And it seems as though it could be more of like a natural type kind of a fishway because of the existing slopes in that area. Again, I'm not a biologist, so it's kind of not my specialty, but yeah, that's the context there. And speaking with Glenn, I know he's working with this with his designers, and that's how they're talking about this fish ladder gathering. Hope that helps.
Thanks, Sean. That's great info.
So this site was the birthplace of Berkshire Hathaway. And we did write Warren Buffett 15 years ago. He said he gave all his money to Bill Gates. But maybe we could really come up with another push and see if we can't get some private funds for that, using this as an example of this history.
Let's do a public shaming media campaign. Why isn't Berkshire Hathaway? What happened to Berkshire Hathaway?
Or you could just ask them to honor their legacy.
So I mean, we didn't have pictures like this.
Try to like
That's
for
on the other
a second.
They might be more into it now. I don't know, or maybe you can find a connection with fish passage and say like, you wanna maybe call it Berkshire Hathaway. Be interested.
Maybe so.
Or in Buffett Park, I don't know.
Buffett fish buffer.
Oh, I like that. I like that.
It's always helpful to come up with some big companies that can provide funding and all this stuff.
Well, maybe not, but who knows?
Unless they started, so we could go back to that. Yeah, it was about Berkshire Fine Sweating Associates. They were bought by Hathaway Manufacturing. Berkshire Hathaway.
Okay, so we have some follow-ups on that one, but do you know when the next meeting is, John, for that? I never got an email about it.
They had it Monday.
I was not on the email list. I
So
attended
is-
last time. Okay, so is there another one, or is that?
No,
it is what it is?
the next meeting, they'll just be making a presentation in front of the town council.
Okay, when you hear about when that is, can you share it out ahead of time?
Yeah,
Or let me know who to elbow so that they'll include me.
Okay.
And I'll send that.
I'm gonna have to say that some of the people that were in the last meetings were.
Yeah, I was not. Oh, that's it.
No, it was a public meeting, yeah. Double check.
Okay. So next thing on the agenda. We have this Fish Passage 101, and thank you so much to Rachel for putting this together. Do you want to go over kind of like where we're at now, and then I know folks have some feedback?
Yeah, definitely. So thank you all for your patience. This is a draft, welcome feedback. We had a chance as a core team to look at this earlier in the week, so I just wanted to give you a few updates. First of all, the idea is for this to be interesting and accessible for the public, people who may have no prior exposure to fish passage in the river. And I want to say thank you to Bruce for taking the time to talk with me for that important added cultural perspective. So the updates from earlier this week, we're going to add American eel. This morning, Phil sent me updated language on fish biology, so that'll be in there. And then in the action section at the end, I just want to call out that my intention is to make sure that people understand the historic nature of the fish passage itself, that the fish aren't getting through. Not intending to talk about Indigenous folks in the past. So I just want to make that clear. So language, all feedback, please send me that and I'll get that incorporated into an updated design. And then I believe we're going to add the Rhode Island DEM logo as well.
Yeah, you can make that collaborative logo like an 8 the size of it. It's so big.
Yeah, that's just what our designer put in there. So
Yeah, I mean, we don't even have to be on it. We didn't make it. You guys made it, so I feel like you should take the credit, but.
Yeah, I would love to include everybody who's involved, you know, so I'm not overly concerned with whose logo's on there, but I will like shout out to Lori Marandola, who's our graphics whiz at the Research Reserve. She made this pretty, so, and thank you so much, Rachel, for your work on it.
Yeah,
Budget for language, so it's not a miscode up there.
I just wanted to mention, there was, Stephanie had taken this document, converted it to Google Docs and sent it around. I added a bunch.
unofficially.
All right, yeah, so you, all right. I just wanted to make sure that you saw some suggestions from me.
Yeah, so I'm gonna share these. So I asked a few people of like, hey, very unofficially, like, what do you think of this? What would be your feedback? And people had a lot, so I'll share this with you. And I haven't put mine yet either. But I think most of it is just trying to simplify and make it as, you know, sort of more generalized language. I really like, it sounds so simple, but I really like how can we help fish swim up the Blackstone instead of have fish passage on the Blackstone?
More active versus passive.
Yeah, and I'm like debating on the title too. I want it, on the one hand, I wanted to say fish passage because we all say fish passage. And so I want people to make that connection, but also
not necessarily the most accessible.
it's super inaccessible.
Yeah. Fish migration. I don't know. Yeah,
Migratory fish on the river, on the Blackstone, or, you know.
deserves some thought. Yeah.
Yeah, and the other
Thank you,
question.
Kate, for your comments. Appreciate you taking a look.
Yeah.
It could even be.
I do a lot of taking of fairly scientific concepts and trying to make them accessible to people. And so, and also like I'm a stickler for jargon. Anything where I'm like, what does that even mean? I'm like, all right, delete and rewrite.
That's not always easy. It's like deceptively hard to do, you know, but it's important. Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you everyone for feedback. We'll get that incorporated into the next draft.
I'd just like to say that it's brilliant. There's an inverse relationship between the length of such a document and reader comprehension. Shorter it is, the more the reader will comprehend the message. I think it's great. The other thing too is sometimes we use the word connecting. So that's what's occurring is you are making a connection in the street.
I got a comment. Can we organize an American Eel Festival since they're in the river and migrating up the river? It's something we have, kind of a mystery.
I mean, I would say we don't have a sustainable population of American eel, that's my understanding. Do they get up the river? Yes, because they're creepy, cool little things that can cross roads and climb dams, but.
They are not moving up the river in the volume that they would.
Right, it's not a
If you
sustainable
had,
population.
Technical fish ladders.
Right.
They do rainy nights, there is that ability to get upstream, but it isn't a common event that occurs.
Yeah.
Once you get a technical fish ladder in there that has eel passes, then you're gonna see a major difference in the eels that you're gonna find upstream in all of the lakes and ponds.
I mean, I would rather include eel in part of our fish migration parade than to make a new one. That just sounds like a lot of work. I had a question. So on the like what we can do, So I'm hesitant to say join the monthly fish passage meetings because this is a quote unquote closed advisory board. Like we were all asked to be on this board. It's not necessarily open to the public. However, they're also recorded. We've never shared those recordings because we haven't made a page about it yet. But one of our to-dos, as long as DEM is comfortable with it, is to make a page around fish passage and be more open about like, here's, you know, not giving away the Zoom links necessarily, but like sharing the notes and sharing the recordings.
And then that could be visit our webpage.
And that could be the visit. So then it's see what we're up to in our advisory committee meetings, but it's not join our meetings.
Yeah.
And then we would share any of these outreach materials there.
Yeah, and again, speaking to the draft nature of this, I was like, what can people do? I went to the website, which I think we might want to update in that case, because it says, are you interested in joining the meetings? Get in touch with us.
Yeah,
So-
so because we're supposed to have public meetings and we've
I
never
see.
made public.
Right, that's the other
I
piece,
missed
so
Yeah,
maybe
no,
a
that's
more
okay.
general, like, visit the webpage and then they'll get information about the public
Yeah,
meetings. they
we
can
do
look
need
at.
to update that.
Great, well,
And we'll probably make a new link, and I don't know what that link is yet. The other thing I wanted to mention is we often go back and forth between calling it Kitticook or calling it Blackstone, and so we know now that the Narragansett word is Mishikitticook Sepe, so including that word in there as well, and we're trying to like have both, which is sort of hard because we were like pretty good about saying like, forget Blackstone, do Kitticook, and now we're like, oh, okay, you have to do balance, so, but we should have that. So, thank you for your feedback. We'll get more feedback. We are at time, and really amazingly, we actually did get through the things. I have one more thing before we all go. So our next meeting is July 18th, and we cannot have this room again, of room 300. So the question is, do we want to use a different room, 330C at DEM, or do you want to do just a Zoom meeting?
I promise to plug in any virtual equipment before it starts and start on time. The one we would use is like, if you think of this hallway as like a U, it's like down the hall and to the right. It's the Air Resources Conference Room. It's just a little smaller, but I think we would all fit in there. So totally, if you guys want an in-person option, that's fine. I mean, like our core team could just be in there and then
Yeah.
it could be mostly virtual.
So
Whatever works for folks.
if you would want hybrid, raise your hand. If you would want virtual, raise your hand. Yes, those are the two.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hybrid means in person and
Yeah, in person.
hybrid,
Okay.
hybrid. Okay,
It's already reserved, so again, I'll send out directions to find that room. It's a little.
Same time, 11:30.
okay. So just to note that both of our next meetings, July and August, will be that same thing. We don't have room 300. We will send this in the email reminder, but it will be in room 330C or online. Okay. Thank you, everybody. That was super efficient. Really, really appreciate everyone's feedback, and we'll get you notes and follow-ups.
Thanks, Deb.
Thanks,
Great job.
everybody.
Thank you.
Exactly.
Thanks for your patience too, online.
It's 50%.